They say you're supposed to trust your family, that blood is thicker than water, that your children will always have your back when you need them most. I believe that too. Right up until I woke up from emergency heart surgery to find my entire life being sold off piece by piece on Facebook Marketplace. My grandmother's antique china, my late husband's vinyl collection, even my wedding dress, all of it, gone. Auctioned off to strangers while I was lying on an operating table fighting for my life. My daughter's caption? Spring cleaning. Everything must go. I survived a heart that tried to kill me. But what came next? Let's just say my daughter and son-in-law discovered that some things in life are far more dangerous than a failing heart. They discovered what happens when you betray a woman who has nothing left to lose. My name is Helen, and this is the story of how I lost everything and then took back so much more. Let me take you back 6 months before that surgery, back when I actually believed I had a family who loved me. I'm 63 years old, a retired English teacher from Portland, Oregon. My husband Daniel passed away 3 years ago from cancer, and honestly, I was still finding my footing as a widow. We'd been married for 37 years. You don't just bounce back from losing your best friend. My daughter Jessica was 34, married to a real estate agent named Trevor. On paper, they seemed successful. Big house in the suburbs, new cars every 2 years, always posting pictures from expensive restaurants on social media. But I'd started noticing things. The way Trevor's smile never quite reached his eyes. How Jessica had become increasingly interested in my finances after Daniel died. "Mom, have you thought about updating your will?" she'd ask during our weekly dinners. "You know, just to make sure everything's in order." "Mom, this house is too big for you. Have you considered downsizing? Trevor knows some great investment properties." "Mom, are you sure you want to keep all of Dad's stuff? It's not healthy to live in the past." I dismissed it as concern. What a fool I was. My house was a 3-bedroom Craftsman in a nice neighborhood, paid off decades ago. Daniel and I had filled it with a lifetime of memories and, yes, valuable antiques. My grandmother had been a collector, and I'd inherited her entire estate. Victorian furniture, Depression-era glassware, first-edition books, oil paintings by minor artists who'd since become major. I'm not talking about a fortune, but enough that auction houses had sent me appraisal letters over the years. I never sold any of it. These weren't just objects. They were my history, my connection to the people I'd loved and lost. Then came February 14th, Valentine's Day. Ironic, isn't it? I was in my garden trimming back the roses Daniel had planted for our 20th anniversary when the pain hit. It felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest, crushing the air from my lungs. My left arm went numb. The garden spade fell from my hand. I managed to call 911 before I collapsed. The paramedics told me later that I'd had a widowmaker heart attack, a complete blockage of the left anterior descending artery. 90% of people who have one outside a hospital don't survive. I was lucky, they said. Lucky to have been conscious enough to call for help. Lucky they got there in time. Lucky that Portland General had one of the best cardiac surgeons in the state. From the emergency room, I called Jessica. She arrived within an hour, mascara running, hands shaking. Trevor came too, putting his arm around her, whispering reassurances. I remember thinking how grateful I was to have them there. "We're here for you, Helen," Trevor said, squeezing my hand. "Whatever you need." The doctors explained that I needed emergency surgery. They'd have to do a triple bypass. It was serious, they said, life-threatening. But I was stable enough for the moment, and they wanted to schedule it for the next morning to assemble the best surgical team. "Will she be okay?" Jessica asked, tears streaming down her face. "She's strong," the cardiologist said. "The surgery will take about 6 hours, and then she'll be in ICU for a few days. But her prognosis is good." That night, Jessica stayed with me in the hospital. We talked about everything and nothing. She held my hand and told me she loved me. She said she couldn't imagine a world without me in it. I believed every word. "Mom, don't worry about the house or anything," she said, as the nurses prepared me for surgery the next morning. "Trevor and I will take care of everything. You just focus on getting better." I gave her my house keys. "Thank you, sweetheart. Could you water my plants and maybe bring me some fresh clothes when I'm in recovery?" "Of course, Mom. We'll take care of everything." The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took me was Jessica kissing my forehead. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in ICU with tubes down my throat and a nurse telling me the surgery had been successful. Recovery from open-heart surgery is no joke. They literally crack open your chest, stop your heart, and reroute your blood through a machine while they work on you. Then they wire your sternum back together and hope everything heals. For the first 3 days, I was too drugged and too weak to do anything but sleep. Jessica visited once, briefly, claiming she wasn't feeling well. Trevor didn't come at all, but I was exhausted and in pain, so I didn't think much of it. It was my friend Patricia who changed everything. Patricia taught history at the same high school where I'd taught English. We'd been friends for 28 years. She came to visit me on day 4, bringing flowers and gossip from our retired teachers group. "Helen," she said, settling into the chair beside my bed, "I saw the strangest thing yesterday." "What's that?" My voice was still hoarse. "From the breathing tube." I was scrolling through Facebook Marketplace looking for a bookshelf for my grandson, and I came across a listing that caught my eye. Victorian settee, absolutely gorgeous. The photo looked familiar, so I clicked on it. She pulled out her phone. "This was posted from your daughter's account." I stared at the screen. My grandmother's settee, the one that had sat in my living room for 40 years. The burgundy velvet was unmistakable, as was the carved mahogany frame. That's mine," I whispered. Patricia's face went pale. I was hoping I was wrong. With shaking hands, I took her phone and clicked on Jessica's profile. The marketplace listings went on and on. My grandmother's china cabinet, Daniel's vintage record player, and his entire collection of jazz albums. My mother's jewelry box, the oil painting that had hung above our fireplace, my wedding china, even the handmade quilt my grandmother had made for my wedding. Post after post. Spring cleaning, make an offer. Downsizing, everything must go. Estate sale prices. Some items were already marked as sold. I felt like I was having another heart attack. My chest monitor started beeping frantically, and nurses rushed in. "What's wrong? Are you in pain?" I couldn't speak. I just kept scrolling through the listings, each one a fresh knife to my heart. There were pictures of strangers loading my furniture into trucks, screenshots of transactions, 5-star reviews praising Jessica for being so easy to work with and having such beautiful items at great prices. She'd even sold my husband's ashes. Let me repeat that. She sold the decorative urn containing my husband's ashes for $75. Patricia grabbed my hand. "I'm calling the police." "Wait." My voice was barely a whisper, but it stopped her. "Don't. Not yet." The nurse injected something into my IV that made the world go soft and blurry. But before I slipped under, I made Patricia promise to do something for me. Document everything. Screenshot every listing, every transaction, every comment, everything. When I woke up hours later, Patricia was still there, and she wasn't alone. "Helen," she said gently, "this is my nephew, Marcus Rodriguez. He's a lawyer. I told him what's happening. He wants to help." Marcus was maybe 40, with kind eyes and a firm handshake that he moderated when he saw the IV in my hand. "Mrs. Chen," he said, "I'm so sorry this is happening to you. With your permission, I'd like to look into this situation." "I can't afford—" "Pro bono," he interrupted. "When Patricia told me what your daughter did, let's just say this hits close to home. My own mother was exploited by family members after a stroke. I specialize in elder abuse and estate law now." Elder abuse. The words made me flinch. I wasn't elderly, I was only 63. But legally, I supposed I qualified. "Tell me everything you remember," Marcus said, pulling out a legal pad. Over the next hour, I walked him through my entire relationship with Jessica and Trevor. The questions about money, the suggestions to sell the house, how quickly they'd changed after Daniel died, when I went from being half of a couple to a widow living alone in a house full of valuable items. Marcus took notes, his expression growing darker. Mrs. Chen, did you give your daughter permission to enter your home? Yes, to water the plants and get me some clothes. Did you give her permission to sell your belongings? Absolutely not. Do you have any documentation? A will, a power of attorney, anything that outlines your wishes? My will leaves everything to Jessica, but I'm not dead, and I never gave anyone power of attorney. Marcus nodded grimly. What they've done is called theft and conversion, potentially elder abuse and exploitation. In Oregon, if the value exceeds $1,000, it's a felony. What can we do? Patricia asked. First, we document everything. Second, we get Mrs. Chen out of this hospital and somewhere safe. And third, he smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant smile. We make them regret ever thinking they could get away with this. I was discharged from the hospital 2 days later. Normal procedure for a bypass is 5 to 7 days in the hospital. But I was recovering well, and Marcus argued that my mental health required a different environment. I couldn't go home. The thought of walking into that violated space made me physically ill. Patricia insisted I stay with her. Her house was smaller, but it had a ground-floor guest room and she was retired, so she could help me with the physical tasks I couldn't manage yet. You'd be surprised how much you use your chest muscles until someone sawed through your sternum. Marcus came by that evening with his laptop and a cardboard file box. I've been busy, he said, spreading documents across Patricia's dining room table. He'd done more than document the Facebook listings. He'd filed a police report, contacted Facebook to preserve the evidence before Jessica could delete it, reached out to everyone who'd purchased items to get statements and receipts, filed emergency motions for protective orders, and started drafting a lawsuit that made my head spin. We're going after them for theft, conversion, fraud, elder financial abuse, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and breach of fiduciary duty, he explained. In Oregon, elder abuse cases can result in treble damages. Treble? Triple. If we prove your daughter knew what she was doing was wrong and did it anyway, the judge can award you 3 times the actual damages. How do we prove that? Marcus smiled and turned his laptop toward me. She made it easy. He showed me the Facebook messages. Jessica hadn't just sold my things. She'd bragged about it. Finally cleaning out Mom's hoard, she'd written to a friend. This stuff is worth a fortune. Trevor found a guy who'll appraise the jewelry. We're going to make bank off this. Another message. Mom's surgery is taking forever. At least we're getting something out of this nightmare. And the worst, honestly, part of me hopes she doesn't make it. Then we won't have to deal with her reaction when she finds out. The inheritance would be cleaner. I stared at those words for a long time. My daughter, hoping I would die to make her theft more convenient. There's more, Marcus said quietly. We pulled your home security footage. I don't have security cameras. You do now. Ring doorbell, installed 2 years ago. You probably forgot about it. He played the video. Jessica and Trevor entering my house the day after my surgery. Not with small boxes for clothes and plant supplies, but with a moving truck. Over the next several hours, the footage showed them systematically emptying my house. At one point, Trevor actually laughed and made a joke I couldn't hear but could read on his lips, like taking candy from a baby. They'd brought professional movers. This wasn't impulsive. They'd planned it. When did they install the doorbell? I asked. According to the Amazon receipt, 14 months ago. They gave it to you for Christmas. I remember. I thought it was so sweet of them to worry about my safety. They weren't worried about your safety, Mrs. Chen. They were documenting access points, making sure they could get in when they needed to. The coldness of it took my breath away. They'd been planning this for over a year, waiting for their opportunity, and my heart attack had been the perfect excuse. Over the next week, Marcus worked 18-hour days. He subpoenaed bank records showing that Jessica and Trevor had deposited nearly $47,000 from the sales. He got statements from neighbors who'd witnessed the removal of my belongings. He interviewed the people who'd bought my items, many of whom were horrified when they learned the truth. Several offered to return what they'd purchased. He also discovered that Jessica and Trevor were in serious financial trouble. They'd taken out a second mortgage on their house. Trevor's real estate business was failing. They had over $80,000 in credit card debt. They'd seen my belongings as a way out, and they'd sold my husband's ashes for $75 because they needed every penny. The police were less helpful than I'd hoped. "It's a civil matter," they kept saying. "Family dispute." It wasn't until Marcus showed up with his documentation and legal credentials that they finally opened a criminal investigation. The day the detective went to interview Jessica was the first time she'd tried to contact me since I'd left the hospital. 15 missed calls, 23 text messages. "Mom, please call me. There's been a misunderstanding." "Mom, we were just trying to help. The house was too full." "Mom, you're blowing this out of proportion." And finally, "Mom, if you don't drop this, you'll never see your grandchildren again." I didn't have grandchildren. Jessica and Trevor had been trying for years. But the threat was clear. If I had them in the future, they'd be used as weapons. I blocked her number. Marcus filed the lawsuit 3 weeks after my surgery. The same day, we held a press conference. See, Marcus had a friend who was an investigative journalist for the Oregonian. The story of a daughter selling her mother's belongings while she was in heart surgery, that was news. That was the kind of story that made people pay attention. The article went viral. Within 48 hours, it had been picked up by CNN, The Today Show, and Inside Edition. My story was trending on Twitter. TikTok was full of videos expressing outrage. Someone started a GoFundMe to help me replace my stolen items, which I immediately shut down. I didn't want charity. I wanted justice. The public reaction was swift and brutal. Jessica and Trevor's employers were flooded with complaints. Trevor's real estate license was suspended pending an ethics investigation. Their church asked them to step down from their positions. Their friends abandoned them. Someone found Jessica's social media posts and shared them widely. That spring cleaning caption became infamous. People started using it sarcastically. "Oh, your mom's in surgery. Time for some spring cleaning." Jessica and Trevor became pariahs overnight. The legal process moved faster than I'd expected. Marcus explained that this was because the evidence was overwhelming and the public pressure was intense. The district attorney, who'd initially been reluctant to pursue criminal charges, suddenly became very interested in making an example of my case. Jessica and Trevor were arrested and charged with felony theft, elder abuse, and fraud. Their mugshots were posted online. More viral content, more public shaming. They tried to fight it at first. They hired an expensive defense attorney who argued that I'd given them verbal permission to handle my affairs and that there'd been a misunderstanding about the scope of that permission. It didn't work. Marcus had too much evidence: the security footage, the Facebook messages, the bank records, the statements from buyers, my medical records proving I was in surgery during the thefts, the expert testimony about the value of the stolen items. But here's what broke them. Marcus found evidence of 3 other elderly relatives they'd helped in similar ways. Trevor's aunt, who'd had a stroke, Jessica's godmother, who'd had dementia, Trevor's grandfather, who'd been in assisted living. In each case, they'd gained access to the person's home, sold off valuables, and pocketed the money. Tens of thousands of dollars gone. And in each case, the victims had been too sick, too confused, or too afraid of family conflict to report it. Marcus tracked down these victims. He got their stories. He built a pattern of behavior that destroyed any claim of misunderstanding. My daughter and son-in-law weren't opportunistic. They were predators. The criminal trial was scheduled for September, but it never happened. In July, their lawyer approached Marcus with a plea deal. "They want to avoid trial," Marcus told me over coffee in Patricia's kitchen. "They're willing to plead guilty to all charges if we agree not to push for maximum sentencing." What are they offering? Full restitution of all stolen items or their cash value, whichever you prefer. a formal written apology, 5 years of probation, community service, and they've agreed not to contest the civil lawsuit. What about jail time? The DA is recommending suspended sentences given their lack of prior criminal records. They'd only go to jail if they violate probation. I was quiet for a long time. I want them to go to jail, I said finally. They didn't just steal things. They stole my sense of safety, my trust. They made me question whether my own daughter ever loved me, or if I was just a bank account waiting to be emptied. Marcus nodded. I understand, but I need you to consider something. A trial could take years. Appeals, delays, continuances. You'd have to testify, you'd have to relive this over and over, and there's always a chance, however small, that a jury might be sympathetic to them. The evidence is overwhelming. It is, but juries are unpredictable. A good defense attorney can spin a narrative. They could paint you as a confused, sick old woman who misunderstood her daughter's intentions. They could argue that you'd discussed selling items before and forgot. They could make you look unreliable. I'm not unreliable. I know that. But you'd be testifying 6 months post-surgery, and they'd bring up your medications, your pain levels, your stress. They'd try to make the jury question your memory and your motives. I hadn't thought of that. If you take the plea, Marcus continued, it's over. You get your money back. They admit guilt publicly. They're marked as felons for the rest of their lives. They'll never be able to do this to anyone else, and you can move on. What about the civil suit? That's where we destroy them financially. They're not contesting it, remember. We go before a judge, present our evidence, and get a judgment. Given the elder abuse findings, we'll get treble damages, plus attorney's fees, emotional distress, and punitive damages. How much are we talking about? Marcus pulled out a spreadsheet. Conservative estimate? $350,000. More aggressive? We could push for $500,000. They didn't have that kind of money. Their house would have to be sold, their cars, everything. They'll declare bankruptcy, I said. They can try. But in Oregon, debts arising from fraud and willful injury can't be discharged in bankruptcy. They'll be paying you for the rest of their lives. I thought about my daughter, working minimum wage jobs with garnished paychecks. I thought about Trevor, unable to work in real estate, unable to escape the Google results that would forever link his name to elder abuse. I thought about them losing their house, their status, their future. And I felt nothing. Take the deal, I said. The plea hearing was in August. The courtroom was packed with journalists, advocates from elder abuse organizations, and strangers who'd followed the story online. Jessica and Trevor stood before the judge in matching gray suits, their expensive lawyer beside them. They wouldn't look at me. The judge was a woman in her 60s, Judge Sarah Martinez, known for being tough on exploitation cases. Ms. Chen and Mr. Whitmore, she said, her voice sharp. You've pleaded guilty to felony theft in the first degree, elder abuse, and fraud. Before I accept these pleas, I want to make sure you understand what you're admitting to. You stole from a woman who trusted you. You violated that trust while she was fighting for her life. You sold her most precious belongings, including her late husband's remains, for profit. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done? Yes, Your Honor, they mumbled in unison. Speak up. I want everyone in this courtroom to hear you. Yes, Your Honor, they said louder. Good. Plea accepted. You're both sentenced to 5 years of supervised probation. If you violate the terms of your probation in any way, you will serve the maximum sentence of 5 years in state prison. You're ordered to pay full restitution to Mrs. Helen Chen within 90 days. You're prohibited from contacting the victim. You'll each complete 500 hours of community service at organizations serving elderly and vulnerable populations, and you'll both be registered in the state's elder abuse database. She paused, looking at them over her glasses. I've been a judge for 23 years. I've seen a lot of terrible things people do to each other. But what you did to your own mother, she looked at Jessica. What you participated in. She looked at Trevor. That's a special kind of evil. You saw a woman at her most vulnerable and decided it was an opportunity. You're lucky you're not going to prison today. Don't make me regret this mercy. She banged her gavel. The civil case was faster. With their guilty pleas on record, they had no defense. Marcus presented our damages, the value of the stolen items, the cost of replacing them, the emotional distress, the medical complications from stress. Judge Martinez awarded us $412,000, treble damages for the proven value of the stolen items, plus emotional distress, plus attorney's fees, plus punitive damages. Jessica and Trevor filed for bankruptcy anyway. It was denied. The debt survived. Their house went up for sale in October. I bought it through an LLC, then I rented it back to them at slightly below market rate. You might think that's cruel, but here's the thing. I wanted them to know, every single month when they paid rent, exactly who owned the roof over their heads. I wanted them to remember what they'd lost, what they'd destroyed, every single day. Marcus thought it was brilliant. They'll never escape you, he said. He was right. It's been 4 months since the civil judgment. I'm writing this from my new house, a beautiful 2-bedroom cottage near the coast. I couldn't go back to my old house. Too many ghosts, too many violations. So I sold it and started over. I've replaced some of what was stolen. Some items are irreplaceable, like Daniel's ashes. A kind woman who'd bought the urn returned it to me, refusing to accept the money I tried to give her. "Keep it," she said. "Some things shouldn't be bought or sold." The urn was empty, of course. Daniel's ashes had been dumped out, probably in someone's trash, but I filled it with soil from our garden and some of the rose petals from the bushes he planted. It sits on my mantle now, a reminder that some things can't be taken, even when everything else is. I've heard through mutual friends that Jessica and Trevor are divorcing. The stress, the shame, the financial ruin, their marriage couldn't survive it. Trevor apparently blames Jessica for everything, claiming it was her idea. Jessica claims she was pressured by him. They're both lying. They were partners in theft, and now they're paying the price separately. Jessica tried to reach out once, about 2 months ago. She sent a letter through her lawyer asking if we could talk, saying she'd been in therapy and realized what she'd done, saying she wanted to make amends. I didn't respond. Some things can't be mended. People ask me if I feel guilty about what happened to them, if I think the punishment was too harsh. I tell them this: I didn't destroy my daughter's life. She destroyed it herself. I didn't choose to betray family bonds. She did. I didn't sell someone's wedding dress while they were in surgery. She did. All I did was refuse to be a victim. Marcus still calls to check on me. He's become a good friend. We're actually working together now on a new project, advocating for stronger elder abuse laws in Oregon. We're pushing for legislation that would make crimes against vulnerable adults during medical emergencies automatically qualify for enhanced sentencing. We're calling it Daniel's Law, after my husband. Because here's what I learned. Bad people count on good people being too polite, too forgiving, too afraid of conflict to fight back. They count on you prioritizing family harmony over justice. They count on shame and silence. Don't give them that power. I'm 63 years old. I'm a heart surgery survivor. I'm a widow. I'm a retired teacher. And I'm the woman who fought back. My daughter thought that my age, my grief, and my illness made me weak. She thought that my love for her would make me forgive anything. She thought that stealing from me while I was fighting for my life would be consequence-free. She was wrong on all counts. I survived a heart attack and emergency surgery. But more than that, I survived the ultimate betrayal and came out stronger. I have a new home, new friends, new purpose. I've turned my pain into advocacy that will help others. My daughter has a criminal record, a ruined reputation, bankruptcy, a failed marriage, and a monthly reminder that she destroyed everything for $47,000 that she'll be paying back for the rest of her life. Sometimes I think about that morning before surgery, the way she kissed my forehead, the way she said, "I love you." I wonder if any part of that was real, or if she was already calculating the value of my grandmother's china. I'll never know. And honestly, I've stopped caring. Because here's the truth that I want you to understand. You teach people how to treat you, and when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Even if it's your own child, even if it breaks your heart, even if people tell you that family should forgive anything, some betrayals are unforgivable, some bridges should stay burned. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply refusing to be destroyed by the people who tried to destroy you. My heart is scarred, literally and figuratively, but it's still beating. And every beat reminds me that I survived. I survived the heart attack. I survived the betrayal. I survived my own daughter, and I'm still here. That's my victory. That's my spring cleaning.